let's look at some specific. That's a broad stroke reaction. The big idea Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman has laid is that there will be employment-linked incentives, not just for you as an employer, but take, for example, other companies, also some MSMEs. From the mindset of an employer, do you think that some of the semi-formal, informal jobs which were off the payrolls then get regularized because for 4 years the government offers an incentive to those who are then brought on the payroll? To what extent do you think this will boost formal job creation?
I think in isolation, these things work, but not super effectively. But I think clubbed with the multiple other things that she mentioned, I think it can work. So please remember at this moment, one of the things that we are constantly talking about is the feeling of joblessness. It's not as if there is actual joblessness, by the way. The feeling that we are not creating enough jobs is a serious problem. And inflation, of course, does not help at all at the same time. So by doing 2 or 3 things, one is controlling the fiscal deficit to where she has and announcing a lower one next year. It's a clear indication of what the government's finances are likely to look like. Therefore, the impact on the overall economy. Now, having said that, if you are encouraging companies to grow by the 4 or 5 things that she mentioned, then clubbed alongside that, to take in interns is actually a good idea. To take in new employees under making them formal, I think is a good idea. Will it work across the board? It's hard to say today because, as you just said, we have yet to see the fine print. But overall, this is something that as industry we have been asking for. We said on the one hand, you have production-linked incentive. You also need to encourage employment, especially in sectors that have high employment potential. Whether you look at textiles or you look at sectors which had suffered in the economy overall, also needed some attention.
Mr. Munjal,
is an internship effectively a short-term employment, essentially? So you're not suggesting beyond that 1 year that you're guaranteeing them some kind of employment. You're just giving them a leg up at the start.
It's a spectrum between skilling and full-time
So it's more the messaging that you're giving, that you're conscious of the fact that there is a job problem and you're trying to reach out and convince both employers as well as the you're trying to do something.
On-the-job skilling also happens.
The job skilling is a separate scheme that they've announced that they're going to do.
The other one, where you pay 1 year salary, is a job creation scheme.
Okay. One of the country's senior financial sector executives, Sanjay Nair, joins us, founder, chairman, Sovereign Investment Fund, has run different kinds of banks. Sanjay, welcome. I want to start by asking you about the increase in the long-term capital gains tax. The market's obviously initially reacting quite negatively to that. Do you think there was logic to why this has been increased from 10 to 12.5? Or as Rajiv Kumar said earlier, it's like trying to fix something that aren't broken?
That's true. You can look at it that way. But
Exuberance is not broken.
Long-term capital gains should make sure it's not the driver of the markets. I mean, it's not like we're an expensive LTCG among the other global countries. So I don't think it's a big deal to increase by 2.5 points. If the underlying growth is there and the way the PE multiples are, I don't think it should have a long-term impact on the markets.
Also, angel tax finally being abolished was a bad idea to begin with. The government acknowledging that, quite belatedly. What kind of an impact? Because you're investing a lot in private equity, you're investing a lot in startups. So your sense of the impact that abolition will have?
Sorry, I missed that question again.
I'm saying angel tax being done away with, your assessment of the impact this will have on the startup sector.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a positive one. That's really positive. These are small irritants that had actually escaped, not attention, but attention to really get done. Like, this ESOPs for foreign expats working in the country, this movable assets being depenalized for less than 20 lakhs, angel tax. I mean, these just had to go, and I think I'm very happy that those have been addressed, howsoever small, but they're irritants, and it just creates a climate that it's tough for startups to get things done and to have the right shareholder agreements, to have the right kind of fundraising at the right fair market value. So I think that's a real welcome change.
Munjal, a lot was said that we should signal that we are moving away from protectionism, that tariffs should be brought down. It's been done in some sectors. Mobiles, it's been done for minerals, it's been done for gold, silver. Do you think adequate signaling has been done about wanting to embrace international trade, or do you think more should have been done?
I think there's a second part of the signal. One is that we are moving towards open trade. Second is we have been selected with saying these are things that matter to us, which incidentally is the approach every country in the world today is taking. The old move towards globalization and everyone depending on each other clearly has taken a hard knock over the last 5 years. Every country is pulling back. So we are making saying a signal, we want to continue, but we want to continue selectively. And could we have done more? Probably, yes.
I think this move to abolish angel tax is the best one.
What impact will it have on the startup sector?
The government has learned very hard way. You remember last year budget, they actually increased or brought the foreign investors into the ambit of the angel tax.
Sir, ये बुरे idea लेके आते हैं bureaucrats.
Correct. No, they brought last year. So I don't know
They
who,
keep tinkering and tweaking.
I don't know who brought this time, but that's the most sensible.
No, but it's going away. So
Yes.
but I'm saying, look at because the big message is there is continuity in policy making, right? If last year you're increasing a tax, suddenly you're abolishing it, then where is the continuity, Harsh Gupta, you're
what
talking
I'm saying.
about?
They learned it very hard way.
Sometimes when you make a mistake, it doesn't no point being continuously
On
making
this,
mistakes.
you're making
It's
mistake
good
for
to actually remove
last
the tax.
8 years.
I just
remember
want to bring the
big
discussion back
in-
to the bond market, not just the equity market. The bond market obviously likes the fact that instead of 5.1% on the interim budget fiscal deficit, we have a 4.9%.
Correct.
Remember, this is despite coalition political pressures. This is despite the fact that obviously Andhra and Bihar wanted
And
something
this is when
lower.
India is joining a lot of the international bond indices.
Exactly.
Whether it's the Bloomberg.
In fact, the RBI has now been sterilizing foreign inflows.
Yeah, but
last week it actually...
This is also due to RBI doubling its contribution.
Yes, but that is as per a framework. It is,
Doubling from the target.
It is not a discretionary contribution. It is as per an economic capital framework that RBI and the government of India
I
have
know,
agreed.
but the point is that
Yes.
the RBI made all that money because of foreign exchange valuations, etc.,
Yes.
etc. All of that, but the fact remains that they
government-
doubled the contribution from the target.
In the
And so
renewed-
therefore, it's
I'm saying in the renewed political context, the government could have stuck with 5.1%, like it stuck with its capital
That's
expenditure
great.
plan.
That's great going.
The fact that 20 basis points were shaved off
Yes.
is a strong message to the bond market that there will be less supply of paper. As Rahul was saying, you're now in the bond indices. So that will increasingly bring down the cost of capital.
And some shift from
I mean, it's a
equity
good
markets to bond
signaling.
markets.
I don't think it's a
Enough
big
change
move,
in tax regime.
but it's a good signaling.
It's a great signaling, and I think kudos.
Psychologically less than 5 also, right?
No, and signal also to investors to consider, pairing their stock market assets and
bond,
investing
exactly.
more
in bonds.
on the debt side.
Exactly.
What is, when you say signaling, what for you, if there was is there a steady narrative that this government has built? Is there something that comes out of this budget that suggests, when I heard Sunil Munjal saying we've got a direction for the next 5 years, she did outline 8 priorities of the government, but they were, apple pie priorities, infrastructure, women, is that a roadmap that you see? Was there, apart from employment, is there a focus area that you see that has been built for the next 5 years, as the Prime Minister promised that this
So
budget?
before I come to that,
Yes.
on the bond side, the fact is that foreigners' investment in our bonds is still less than what it was in 1920, despite the bond index being. So why they were not investing? Why they were not buying Indian bonds? I think that signaling effect that you have very high fiscal deficit, you have very low credit rating,
Also,
was
global
playing.
Yeah, but the big message. What is the big message?
I
that
think the big message is continuity. The fact that Modi 3.0 is more like Modi 2.0 when it comes to Modi-nomics. So more stability, more capex, and now time for the privatization.
Yes, Puneet.
Okay, so, as everybody used to say, pehle, roti, kapda or makan, this time the budget to me signals naukri, sadak or makan. Because a lot of emphasis on roads, infrastructure, a lot of emphasis on jobs, and then, of course, land records, housing, all
So
of
let's
that.
ask Sanjay Nair this question. The effort that's been made to try and spur job creation, what impact, Mr. Nair, do you think this is likely to have? The signaling is good, the government using some of its financial gunpowder to try and encourage job creation. In the end, from what we know in the public domain, do you think it's likely to work?
Yeah, I think so. I think, look, I was just listening to all of you. I think the big message here is that you've got a pretty balanced budget in a way, and you've reduced the fiscal deficit, as someone mentioned, and I don't know who that was, that we didn't have to shave off the 20 basis points, but I think it will give a lot of confidence to both foreign and local bond investors and really adds to this stability. I think the big message is there is no easy consumption stop. I thought they might do that a little bit, but even that is not there. They've taken the long, arduous way, which is simplifying things, youth skilling, credit guarantee schemes more for the MSMEs, more of this, employer and employee benefits for more employment. They've taken the longer route of job creation, MSMEs for local manufacturing, and also making sure that they've tinkered with custom duties to make sure that you have a lot more local manufacturing. So really it's going towards, I think someone just gave a very good thing. It's about creating Naukri, and then that should lead to much more disposable income and consumption. So frankly, this is a long, arduous route taken. If it works, which all depends on execution between the center and states, I think you have far more sustainable consumption looking ahead, and then hopefully CapEx picks up. So I think that, according to me, is the big message here. And look, fiscal consolidation is welcome, frankly. Yeah.
But and Rajiv Kumar, since you were with Niti Aayog, you can tell us, among the successes of the Modi government in the early years, one of the failures was seen as skill development. You had a Ministry of Skill Development. A lot of talk was on skilling, but very little happened actually, many believe, on the ground when it came to skill development. Even the minister was eventually changed. Is that now, you can't just do employment-linked scheme without really focusing on skilling. Is that going to have to become a big challenge for this government? The fact is that it's all very well to talk about skilling, but you're going to have to make sure that it actually translates into real skilling on the ground.
But Rajdeep, I think it's to the credit of the government that they haven't given up on skilling effort. Because some people could have said, well, that was a bad idea, let's give it up. In this budget, the finance minister has announced further allocations and a loan for those who are doing it into skilling. There are several schemes, I think 3 or 4 schemes that they've been outlined. Yes. So I think this continued focus on skilling is a recognition that today our youth is not employable, and they have to be made employable as fast as possible.
That's a long-term challenge, though. It's not a short-term challenge, and there are no short-term fixes.
But has to start now, and that's what the government has done.
One subtle shift is that instead of skilling people outside of jobs and then giving them jobs, there is a focus on trying to skill them on the job through apprenticeships, internships, and I think that is the best kind of long-term skilling, because it does not get theoretical and academic then.
But there's also a philosophical message here, which is in keeping with the way the Prime Minister views his economics. He doesn't like easy handouts. So the idea that you, for example, the idea was that you increase the Kisan Nidhi from 6,000 to 8,000, or you do some kind of an urban Manrega. He's eschewed such ideas. So there's no easy handout, which is typically what the opposition may have thought they would have wanted to do, or they may have wanted to do, or the kind that we're seeing in Karnataka, etc. There's no easy handout.
It's workfare, not
it's
welfare.
Structural.
Workfare, not welfare.
They're trying to make structural changes. For example, if there is more, and that I think is something which really needs to be applauded. We can criticize the increase in long-term capital gains for the equity markets. That's just really, one aspect.
The markets have recovered largely.
The larger aspect, though, is that they're trying to fix the structure, the nuts and bolts of the economy.
The only thing I worry about, as I said earlier, is I hope this internship program is well executed, because otherwise it risks becoming like an NREGA. Because there'll be people just sitting in the companies with nobody to train them and collecting money and doing no work.
But Sunita, the thing here is that companies don't like people sitting idly inside their premises.
No, but they may not come to the premises, they may stay at home. How do you ensure
that is always the situation, even in skill development.
No, it happened in the US. Remember, when employment incentives were given on the back of the pandemic, there were a lot of reportage in the United States media where individuals were claiming this in cahoots with the companies without actually any work happening. And if it happened to that extent in the US, in India, jugaad can go to another level.
And then work from home, how do you, and who's going to train these people if the manager is working from home?
Rahul, when we traveled in India during the elections, when you spoke to people about the Rozgar challenge, the point that Rajiv Kumar made, and I think is reflected in the budget, is not just about employment, it's employability. And I think that is a challenge which is a long-term challenge. It's not going to be fixed by one budget or what the intent is well. My worry with all of this, the intent is in the right direction. The reality on the ground is very, very different. And unless I see...
but so far, I think there's no
why haven't
answer
we
to the
seen
question.
much higher allotments for education. You know, you want to see not just in skilling, but you want education to be prioritized far more than has happened in the last 10 years, or dare I say, some will say over the last 75 years. Unless you're going to dramatically change that, Rahul, it's not just physical infrastructure. You're going to have to focus far more on social infrastructure.
On education, for example, look what happened in Uttar Pradesh, right? Government school teacher unions are refusing to digitally enter and exit the school based on records. So there's no point just throwing more money as outlays without getting the outcomes.
Yeah,
so it's not just announcing in the budget without getting
But
those...
as I said, it didn't happen with the first tenure of Mr. Modi when skill development was seen as a major focus. It didn't take
Which is
off.
why I think on-the-job
Right,
training
if you look at the
actually
skill-
is a very sensible and pragmatic way to do it, as opposed to showing a headline allocation to education,
In
which
fact,
goes through teacher
I would
unions.
have been
They are not
happier.
coming to schools.
I would have been happier because there are actually acts governing the apprenticeship. Is that if there are much greater allocation to apprenticeship under that name, because that would be a much better way to, you know, sort of balance the
But I
demand
think
and
it's
supply.
been called internship because if it was called apprenticeship, there would have been too much credit fight
the Congress
between the
party.
Congress and the people.
That doesn't matter, yeah. But the
आपको
point-
नहीं matter करता ना, जो election लड़के आए उसको matter करता है.
From Aadhaar downwards, this government has been pragmatic.
Aadhaar existed. You
but
can't now bring an apprenticeship
pragmatic
act.
enough to take other people's ideas.
Yeah, you can change the name
No,
and
we should
and
study
keep
the
scheme,
we should
but
study the German model.